Thank you for taking the time to watch our Ripplefold Drapery Yardage and Pricing demonstration video. This video will introduce you to the Ripplefold Drapery Yardage and Pricing Calculator. We will show you how easy it is to make all of the necessary calculations for your Ripplefold Drapery projects, including the number of ripples required for your track size and fullness, the number of carriers required for your panel, the total number of snap buttons required, and your hemmed panel width, among other things. Using our Ripplefold calculator, you will no longer need to reference confusing charts. Simply enter your rod width and fullness and let our Ripplefold calculator do the rest. Let's get started. We'll begin by clicking our Ripplefold Drapery Yardage and Pricing calculator. Once the calculator is loaded, you'll see the familiar user interface where you can enter your project information. For this project, I'm going to enter customer name Mrs. Smith. The side mark will be the guest room. The sales order number will be 1234A. The fabric pattern will be checkered, and our fabric color will be red, white, and blue. We're going to include pricing with our estimate. We're going to make a pair of panels that are aligned, and we're going to choose the master carrier type that we're going to be working with. If you're not sure how to answer this question, we can click on the master carrier link and we'll see a little help message box pop up where it talks a little bit about how do we make this choice. And with Ripplefold Drapery, there's two types of master carriers. There's an overlapping master carrier, which is very similar to pleated drapery, and then there's the butt style master carrier where they don't overlap. A little bit of light can come through, but we get a much better continuous wave throughout the whole panel as opposed to having this flattened out depression as a result of the overlap. So you'll need to make that choice when you're fabricating Ripplefold Drapery. So I'm going to choose to work with a butt master carrier, which is the type that does not overlap. With Ripplefold Drapery, you have 4 different types of fullness, which is automatically set by the carriers that you're going to be purchasing. And these carriers are strung together. They're sold on a roll, much like the way you'd buy Velcro or snap buttons. And it's pre-configured to be 60% fullness, 80% fullness, 100% fullness, 120% fullness. And each of these fullnesses come or are defined by the carrier spacing. So if we go with 100% fullness, the carriers are spaced 2 1/8 inches apart from each other, which gives us a 2 times fullness. That's really what 100% fullness means. I'm going to select that. Next, I'm not going to railroad my fabric. My rod width, I'll just arbitrarily say it's 96 inches wide. My finish length of my drapes, I'll just say they're going to be 91 inches. My fabric width that I'm working with is 54 inches. I'm going to have a repeat of, let's say, 12.5 inches for my fabric, vertical repeat. My lining width, my interlining widths are standard 54 inch. I'm going to be making 1 pair because I picked a pair up here and it's just 1 window. And I'm going to pick a return size of 3 inches. And I'm going to quickly have a look below at the different settings that go along with this. Now once you set your settings, you usually don't have to come back and change them. And what the settings are basically, how do we fabricate? We fabricate with double 1.5 width panels. We fabricate with top double 1 inch hems. Our bottom hems are 4 inch. Our lining hems on the bottom are double 2s, and so on. And so we'll set this information once, and then we'll save it. And in the future, you may not have to look at this information again. You'll just simply enter your project information up top, like your rod width and your finish length and your carrier type and your fullness. But I want to point out a couple of other things here. If you work with a specific type of track hardware, you can define the overlap master carrier button spacing, because on our overlap master carrier, let's take a look at our help screen. Our overlap master carrier will have certain button spacing and certain overlapping. And we'll need to tell the computer what that is based on the hardware that you're working with. And again, you're probably going to use the same hardware repeatedly, and so you'll define this once and never again. And the same thing goes for our butt master carrier, which basically has two buttons. It does not overlap, and we want to tell the computer how far apart are our buttons. And the same thing goes for our return. At the end of your track, you're going to have a return that usually has two buttons. And we're going to tell the computer exactly where those buttons are so it knows how to do the math for you. Once that's set, you don't ever have to come back and do that again, assuming you keep using the same hardware. So once you program that in, we're going to close up this window and not have to look at it again. The other window I just closed was a pricing window, which we'll talk about later. So now that we've entered our rod width, our finish length, our return, our fullness, and the carrier type, and of course the pair that we're making a pair of panels, I simply click the Calculate Results button, and I'll get all the information that I possibly need to make this panel fit on this pair of panels fit on my 96-inch track. Let's take a look at what it's told us. Well, the specification page, this is our result page, is telling us a little bit about the information we put in. That it's going to be finished at 91 inch, that our rod width is 96 inches, and our fullness is 100%, and our various fabrication input is showing up in front of us here. And then it comes back and it tells us our hemmed panel will need to be 105 inches, our unhemmed panel 111, the amount of yardage that we need, and the amount of button tape that we need. And so we can continue looking at these icons, and we'll see. It'll also tell us how to fabricate, how to make our cuts, what our cut lengths are, including our repeat, what our cut lengths are, how much material we're going to need. It tells us, of course, the fabric pattern that we put in the color, and how much lining we need, and the cuts that we're going to need, etc. And then we get a little visual fabric layout showing us that the left and right panel will each be made from 1 1/2 widths of fabric. Then, this is the great stuff, the stuff that you normally reference charts for and pull your hair out to make work. So we're going to look at the visual ripple fold instructions. So this represents one panel, and it's showing us a right panel. And since you're making a pair, you just duplicate this and flip it over, and you make one left and one right exactly the same. And the computer knows, based on the carrier size that you selected, which means the fullness, that the carriers are spaced at 2 1/8 inch apart in order to get our 100% fullness. We see this over here. And it knows that we need exactly 23 spaces within our folds, along with one return and one butt overlap, in order to get this to fit on our track. And we know our track is 96 inches. And so the computer has quickly figured that one hemmed panel will be, or needs to be, 105 inches. Then have the snap sewn on. You see the green snaps here are the snaps that we call factory snaps. They're continuous and they're rolled out on the roll. And these last two snaps, the red ones, have a different spacing in order to fit onto your hardware and need to either be put on manually, or you have to cut the snap tape to make it fit. And this is just an introduction, so I won't be able to get into every little detail here, but I want you to see that you can count these green snaps, which will always be one more than the number of spaces. And you'll even see a little blow up of what the return looks like and what the overlap looks like. And if we do as, we fabricate using exactly the number of ripples that we have here, you will fit on your track perfectly. The next page of our instructions tell us that we're going to need a one left and one right panel of equal size and construction made from 2 1/2 widths of fabric to cover our track. And then it says, including your button overlap and your return, one hemmed panel measures 105 inches from the first snap to the, including all snaps. When fastened to the carriers on your track, one single hemmed panel will cover 48 and 7 inches of your track. Now, isn't that interesting? Because our track is exactly 96 inches. So the computer came up with a perfect situation where 48 times 2 is 96, plus 7/8 2 times, one for the left panel, one for the right panel, will give you 2 extra inches on your track. And it says if you selected a return, it will begin after the last snap on the end cap and will continue 3 inches further. We get a little bit more information. The measurement from the first factory snap on our button tape to the last factory snap is 97 3/4. That's the green snaps in our picture. So all these green snaps, if they're stretched out, will measure 97 3/4. It says we need 2 additional snaps at the end of each of our panel for the return and 1 for the overlap. And so here we go, we look at that again. There's the 1 additional snap and another additional snap. That's to attach to our master carrier and our return. It goes on to tell us too, you'll need 24 carriers for the left panel and 24 carriers for the right panel, each with a spacing of 2 1/8 inch for a fullness of 100%. And then it advises when installing your panels, always begin at the master carrier and work your way towards the return. So basically what it's doing is it's doing all the thinking for you. No charts, no tables, nothing to think about. You just simply answer the questions and it'll do all the calculations for you, and it'll guarantee that it'll fit on that track exactly as the way you'd want. Let's just say, for argument's sake, we say, oops, I really wanted much fuller panels, 120% fullness. So I'll select that and I'll calculate my results, and I'll go take a look now, and I'm going to have completely different instructions. But once again, like in this scenario, we'll have 50 inches of coverage, 50 and 5/8 inches of coverage. So we're going to have a little bit fuller on our track. We'll have more spaces, we'll have more button tape, and we'll have different carrier spacing, 1 7/8 in this case. So we have 27 waves. Let's go back and say we want less fullness, 60% fullness. So obviously we now have fewer waves. Totally different situation, new instructions, and we use less fabric. And there's no thinking and no charts. Just go do what you love to do and sew without worrying about the hassles of how to figure out this math. Now, look at this butt overlap right here. Okay, we know that the 2 panels are going to connect right here at the center, and a little bit of light will come through. So let's say we want to use an overlap master carrier. I just simply selected an overlap master carrier, and let's say I want 100% fullness, and I go back and I recalculate. Now I'm going to get a different type of an overlap, a different type of finish, I should say, at the center where the 2 panels meet, and this time it'll be an overlap using a different carrier and a different technique. And the computer has obviously figured out how we're going to make this all work on the track with 2 panels, a left and a right, where they'll overlap right here. Let's just say we're going to have, let's go back to the butt master carrier, and we're just going to have a single right stacking panel. We're going to have many more waves now, and of course it's drawn them for us, and it shows us that this is the butt overlap and this is our return. And that's really the gist of it, and it makes it so simple that you can fabricate Ripplefold drapery without any thinking, any confusion, and with total confidence. Now, in another video, we're going to get into the actual pricing side of it, because what you can do is you can tell our calculator how much you charge for lining and interlining and blackout lining and button tape, and what you charge for unlined or lined and interlined Ripplefold drapery, and you can even add silk fabric up charges and hand sewing up charges and installation charges and track charges and so on. And when you calculate your Ripplefold instructions, it will also calculate the pricing for materials and labor. I hope this brief introduction to our Ripplefold calculator answered many of your questions. Please visit www.easypleating.com to start your free trial today. Thank you for watching this demonstration video.